Okay, class, we are still in chapter 8. We stopped at the muscles and now we're moving on to the bones part of the musculoskeletal system. Structure and function of the bones. The human skeleton consists of 206 bones. Serves as a supporting framework of the body. It protects vital internal organs and has an important role in movement and attachments for muscles. The bones are a reservoir for storing minerals, particularly phosphorus and calcium, and they produce blood cells within bone marrow, which is called hematopoiesis. Bone types, we have short bones that are somewhat cube-shaped. They consist of a core spongy bone, also known as a cancellous bone, enclosed in a thin surface layer of compact bone, bones of the ankles, wrists, and toes. Irregular bones are complex shapes, not short or long. Examples would be your vertebrae and bones of the middle ear. Flat bones are exactly as the name suggests. They provide broad surfaces for muscular attachment or protection for internal organs. Examples would be the skull, the shoulder blades, and the sternum. That's just a picture showing some flat bones, irregular bones, long bones, sesamoid bone. The short bones they're showing there in the ankle of the foot there. Okay, long bones are found in the appendages of the body. Your appendages are your legs, arms, and fingers. There are three main parts of a long bone: the diaphysis, which is the main shaft-like portion of the long bone. Compact bone, it forms a cylinder and surrounds the central canal, medullary marrow canal, where it contains yellow marrow. That's fat is stored in the yellow marrow. So that's all. The diaphysis epiphysis is located in each end of the long bone. The distal epiphysis and the proximal epiphysis. Distal is, when you think of distal and proximal, it's referring to the point of attachment. So if your arm attaches, at the shoulder, the furthest distance from the point of attachment or the shoulder would be the distal epiphysis, and the one in closest proximity to the shoulder would be the proximal epiphysis. There is just a picture of a long bone, proximal epiphysis on top, diaphysis in the middle. You got cartilage, you got your yellow bone marrow in there, your periosteum, endosteum. Okay, bone types. Articular cartilage. It's a type of elastic connective tissue that provides a smooth surface for movement of the joints, covers joint surfaces, reduces friction, and absorbs shock. Spongy bone is also called the cancellous bone, contains red bone marrow, and is the site for blood cell production. Epiphyseal line separates the diaphysis and the epiphysis. Periosteum is the dense white fibrous membrane covering the remaining surface of the bone. In growing bones, the inner layer contains the bone-forming cells known as osteoblasts. They provide a means for bone repair and general bone nutrition. They serve as a point of attachment for muscles, ligaments, and tendons. Bone markings are specific features of bones, enlargements that extend out from the body, opening within the bone, hollow regions within the bone, points of attachments for muscles and tendons, points for joining one bone to another, cavities and passages for nerves and blood vessels. Bone depressions are concave areas or openings in a bone. They help form joints. They serve as points of attachment for muscle. A sulcus is a groove or depression in a bone. Example would be a fissure. A sinus is an opening or hollow space in a bone. Example, the frontal sinus. A fossa is a hollow or shallow concave depression in a bone. Example would be the fossa of the iliac or the hip bone. A foramen is a hole within a bone for blood vessels or nerves to pass through. The example would be the foramen magnum of the skull. Okay, we'll start from the head down. Cranial bones. It's a bony skull. It envelops the brain. It's composed of 8 bones. These are immovable bones. The borders meet to form immovable joints or sutures. We have the frontal bone, parietal bone, sphenoid bone, temporal bone, occipital bone, and ethmoid bone. Just the inside of the eye there. I normally do this with my skeleton in the classroom, so I had to add a bunch of pictures so we could at least have a visual. Okay, bones of the thorax. We're heading down to the rib cage. True ribs are ribs 1 through 7. If you can count those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see all of those are attached to the sternum. That's why they're true ribs. False ribs are 8 through 10. Let me see, 8, 9, 10. They are attached to the vertebrae in the back, but the cartilage at the 7th. So these are all fused together. And the floating ribs are back here, right here, 11 and 12. That's because they are not attached to anything. They're not attached to these ribs at all. They just kind of float in the back. They are completely free of attachment. Vertebral bones form a long axis of the body. They are referred to as a spinal column or backbone. There are 24 vertebrae plus a sacrum and coccyx. They offer protection to the spinal cord. So here's a visual. Your neck is your cervical spine. Your ribs are your thoracic spine. Every one of these thoracic ribs or thoracic vertebrae is attached to a rib. There's 12 of them. And then your lumbar vertebrae is your lower back. And then you have the pelvic, which is made up of the sacrum, which is a triangular-shaped bone, and coccyx is what is referred to as the tailbone. So cervical spine they are identified as C1 through C7. Thoracic is identified as T1 through T12. Lumbar is identified as L1 through L5. The sacrum, singular triangular-shaped bone, resulted from fusion of 5 individual sacral bones in the child. The coccyx, like I said, also called the tailbone, resulted from fusion of 4 individual coccygeal bones in the child. Okay, so we've got our cranium, we've got our ribs, and we have our vertebral column. Now we're moving into what we call the pectoral girdle, or the shoulder. This shoulder consists of 2 bones. Your clavicle bone is considered your collarbone, and that is anterior on the front of your body. Scapula, which is your shoulder blade, which is posterior. Attach the bones of the upper limbs to the axial skeleton. It provides attachments for muscles that aid the upper limbs. These 2 bones, along with their associated muscles, form the shoulders of the body, and that is called the pectoral girdle. Upper limbs or extremities. Each upper limb includes an arm, forearm, and hand. Each appendage consists of the humerus, which is in red there, the radius, which is in green, and the radius always lines up with your thumb, and then the ulna lines up with your pinky there. Radius and ulna form the skeleton of the forearm. The bones of each hand include the carpals, which are these little bones right here, your metacarpals, which is the lighter blue, and the phalanges are your fingers. That's the purple right there. A basin, and then we move down to the pelvic girdle or the hip. It's a basin-shaped structure that attaches the lower limbs to the axial skeleton. Along with its associated ligaments, it supports the trunk of the body and provides protection for the visceral organs of the pelvis, the lower organs of digestion, the urinary organs, and the reproductive structures. The female pelvis is shallower than the male pelvis, but wider in all directions. The female pelvis supports the enlarged uterus as the fetus matures and also provides a large opening to allow the infant to pass through during birth. Both female and male pelvis are divided into an ilium, ischium, pubis, acetabulum, symphysis pubis, sacrum. Oops, sorry. Okay, so ilium is the top part. This part right here is the iliac crest. Acetabulum is like in the ball and socket joint, the ball of the femur would go right in there. Ischium is all of this. Pubis is this bone right here. Messed up again. Symphysis pubis is the is cartilage that connects those two together. That's not on there, I don't think. Sacrum is this here, and then coccyx here, which is not labeled. Okay, so from the hips we go down to the lower extremities. Your femur bone is the big bone here. And you see right here the acetabulum goes right into that hip there. Patella is your kneecap. Yeah, so your thigh bone is the largest, strongest, longest bone in the body. Your tibia is the larger and stronger of the two lower leg bones. Some people refer to that as the shin bone. And the fibula is the more slender of the two lower bones. And some people refer to that as the calf bone. It's more in the back. Patella, kneecap, tarsals or talus is your ankle bones here. Metatarsals are your foot bones, and then phalanges are your toes. Ankle bones, and this is just a bigger blown up pictures. There's your phalanges, there's your 4 or 5 toes, your metatarsals. Calcaneus wasn't shown in there, but that's your heel bone back here. Joints of articulation, our body has different kinds of joints. Diarthrosis is a freely movable joint, so those would be things like the ball and socket joint, which you can see right here in the hip, hinge joint, which you can see right here in the elbow. Amphiarthrosis would be slightly movable. An example of them are your vertebrae. We can bend our back just a little bit, but not a lot, right? And then immovable joints would be, you can see the sutures between the different bones in the cranium, but they do not move. And that is it on the skeleton.